The lecture hall of the Galactic Interspecies Academy smelled of ionized air and alien anxiety. Professor Kale Veyron stood at the front of the room, his forearms folded across his broad chest, his ridge-scaled skin catching the overhead light in thin lines of blue-green iridescence. He was a Thyrenian, a species that had catalogued over 9,000 dangerous creatures across 47 star systems. He had survived a Garath stampede on Melvek Prime. He had tamed a Veil serpent using nothing but a signal rod and 3 days of patience. He was not, however, prepared for Mara Ellison. She was late. Not significantly late, just enough to make every head in the room turn when the double doors at the back swung open with a clang that echoed off the stone walls. 32 students watched the entrance. 12 species, ranging from the towering Draken cadets in the back row to the small, trembling Misari cluster huddled near the ventilation ducts. They had all completed the assignment. They had all, per regulation, brought a beast, documented, caged, sedated where necessary, and certified by the Academy's Creature Liaison Office. Mara had not brought a cage. She walked in carrying 2 small creatures pressed against her chest, one tucked in the crook of her left arm, the other draped across her right shoulder like a warm scarf that occasionally yawned. Both of them were covered in dense, tawny fur. Both had rounded ears, wide amber eyes, and miniature paws that flexed and unflexed with sleepy contentment. Both of them were, unmistakably, completely at ease. The Draken cadet in seat 12 made a sound like a leaking gas valve. The Misari cluster shrank 2 inches collectively. Professor Veyron's secondary eyelids, the ones that closed laterally, which only activated when he encountered something genuinely unexpected, slid shut and then open again. "Cadet Ellison," he said, his translator rendering his voice in its usual measured bass. "You are aware that this is advanced xenobeast studies. Not a nursery." "Yes, Professor." Mara set her bag down on the front table with the unhurried ease of someone who had absolutely done their homework. The creature on her shoulder shifted, dug its tiny claws lightly into her collar, and settled back down. "These are Panthera leo, juvenile subspecies. Common name, lion cubs. Age, approximately 8 weeks. She held up the one in her left arm slightly, as if presenting a data model. It blinked at the room. It did not growl. It did not struggle. It simply looked around with enormous amber eyes, then turned its nose toward Mara's jaw and headbutted her affectionately. Several cadets made noises. "Those," said Professor Veyron carefully, "are predator-class mammals from your home world." "Correct. Adult specimens of that species are classified as Threat Category 7 in the Galactic Bestiary Index. They have been documented taking down prey 6 times their body weight." "Also correct." Veyron's secondary eyelids moved again. "And you are holding them?" "Yes. Without restraints." "They're 8 weeks old, Professor. Restraints would stress them." She stroked the cub on her shoulder absently, and it made a sound, a deep, rolling, motorized hum that seemed physically impossible from something that's small and soft. Several of the cadets leaned forward. One Misari almost fell off its perch. "What," said Lyrith, a Draken cadet whose species had a biological fear response to anything with forward-facing eyes, "is that sound?" "Purring," said Mara. "It means they're calm. Happy, even." Lyrith stared. "That is a Threat Category 7 animal. A Threat Category 7 baby animal. Making a sound. A happy sound." Lyrith sat back slowly. His crest, which had been fully raised since the moment Mara walked in, lowered by approximately half. Professor Veyron cleared his throat, or the Thyrenian equivalent of it, which sounded like gravel shifting inside a drum. He had taught this course for 19 standard years. He had seen cadets bring Vorik beetles, a chained nightmaw, and once, memorably, a semi-conscious ridgeback eel that had taken 4 staff members and a containment field to remove from the building. He had evaluation criteria for all of it. He did not have evaluation criteria for this. Cadet Ellison. He clasped two of his four hands behind his back. The assignment was to bring a beast that demonstrates your ability to handle, manage, or communicate with a creature outside your species baseline. The purpose is to assess your competency in cross-species physical interaction and threat mitigation. He paused. Most cadets bring something they can barely manage. Something that demonstrates effort. I know, said Mara. These cubs, he continued, appear to require no effort from you whatsoever. That's the point, actually. She moved to stand fully at the front of the room, and the cub in her arm settled its head against her sternum and closed its eyes. The assignment said bring a beast. It didn't say bring something you're afraid of. It didn't say bring something that was hard to carry. She tilted her head. On my planet, humans have spent approximately 10,000 years developing trust relationships with animals. We have something called domestication, but that's not what this is. These aren't domesticated. Their mother is a wild lioness at a conservation reserve. But they've been socialized to human presence since birth, because their population was at risk and we needed to hand-rear them. She paused. So yes. They don't fight me. They don't fear me. They came willingly, they're calm, and I can hand-carry 2 threat Category 7 Predator-class juveniles across a campus full of alien species they've never encountered, and they still trust me enough to fall asleep. She looked at the professor directly. I thought that was more impressive than showing up with something in chains. The room was very quiet. The cub on her shoulder yawned, a massive, jaw-unhinging, very pink yawn that displayed a full set of needle-sharp milk teeth, and the Misari cluster made a collective noise that sounded like a very small avalanche. Veyron was silent for a long moment. In 19 years, not a single student had argued the rubric back at him. Not like that. Not with that particular calm. It occurred to him, not for the first time, that humans were strange. They were soft-bodied, poorly insulated, laughably slow in a sprint by galactic standards, with no natural venom, no adaptive plating, no pheromone defense systems. They had arrived in interstellar space embarrassingly late, in geological terms. They had no innate telepathy, no sonic organs, no bioluminescent signaling. What they had, and it was becoming clearer to Veyron by the second, was this. This thing they did. This inexplicable, borderline irrational willingness to walk toward dangerous things until the dangerous things forgot to be afraid. What are their names? Asked a small voice from the Misari cluster. Mara looked over. The Misari who had spoken was the smallest of the group, barely the size of Mara's forearm, with large silver eyes and antennae that were trembling slightly but pointed toward the cubs rather than away. Curious, not fleeing. This one's Joe, Mara said, lifting the cub in her arm slightly. And this one, she reached up to scritch gently behind the ear of the cub on her shoulder, is Di. She glanced down the row of faces. You can come closer, if you want. They won't react badly as long as you're calm. No sudden movements, no loud sounds. Let them smell your hand first. Several cadets exchanged looks. Then, slowly, the Misari slid off its perch and crept forward. Lyrith the Draken remained seated. His crest was now fully lowered. He was watching Di, who had cracked one amber eye open and was watching him back with the specific, ancient, utterly unbothered gaze of a predator who has not yet decided you are worth the energy of a reaction. Lyrith found this, somehow, more terrifying than if the animal had growled. Professor Veyron uncrossed all 4 arms. He made a notation on his assessment slate. Later, when the cadets had gone and the evening light was coming orange through the high windows, he would reread what he had written. Cadet Ellison, Mara. Demonstration, Juvenile Panthera Leo X2. Handling method, trust-based relationship cultivation, long-cycle behavioral conditioning, cross-species empathy protocol. Threat mitigation, preemptive. Level of effort apparent to observer, none. Level of skill required, extraordinary. Grade, exceeds expectations. Note for file, humans continue to be, in this instructor's assessment, the most quietly dangerous species currently enrolled at this institution. Not because of what they can fight. Because of what they can make willing. He set the slate down. Outside, somewhere near the east garden, he could faintly hear, even through stone walls and a closed window, the low, rolling, mechanical contentment of two small threat Category 7 animals, completely at peace in a galaxy that was not their own. Because a human had carried them there. And they trusted her.